Hey, welcome to another episode of Electrical Theology, Esoteric Life Coaching, where I teach you how to take responsibility for your thoughts, actions, and emotions. Right? This week, or this episode, we're going to continue where we did with the last episode, and we talked about the first position, second position, how to put yourself into some other person, and then see yourself from that perspective, or position two. And today we're going to finish up with that with position three. So this helps us understand who we are from different multiple positions. And eventually this is going to help us detach our soul, we'll just call it that, our energy within us, from the shell, and then be able to take our shell remotely. But on next episode, we'll talk about more of viewing remotely later, or remotely viewing. Right? So we had these grids, the realms we've talked about before, just to recover here. So physical, mental, spiritual stages, and within those stages you have one realm. So we have the physical realm, mental realm, spiritual realm. Now, it's not affixed to these three realms. Realms are continually going, much like the blockchain technology. It's just a new block's made about every 10 minutes. So within the realms, there's a new realm made within a certain period of time. Once they develop the 21 DNA strands, if you will, to create a cycle. And there's millions of billions of these guys. We're not going to get into that. It's too much, too far, and too deep. But for right now, we talked about, we're still on who and how you are. We touched on this in detail in one area, but now we're going into further detail to figure out more and more about who you are. And understand that you aren't your body. Your body is just a husk, a shell, a suit within space, a space suit that we put on, donned, and in that way we were able to then experience this electromagnetic spectrum, or the visible light spectrum, right? Because we are light beings, we want to experience different frequencies of light. And if we are not yet developed fully as a light being, then we have to sort of don a protective covering to go into higher frequencies. Much like if you go to the bottom of the sea, you're going to need some sort of shell around you to help you navigate and negotiate that terrain. So as beings, light beings, we wrap ourselves and go into different thicknesses of realities, and if it's thicker than what we are as a light being, then we have to don on a different suit and be within that suit. Right? That should be making sense to you now. So this is where we left off last episode. So observing yourself, we talked about this is position one, present state. We want to get to a desired state. And this particular desired state is just seeing yourself from different perspectives. If you only see the world through just your set of eyes in one position, then it's a very myopic life. And you're always going to be dealing with limitations. Right? Limitation is just you're limiting the ions that you're choosing to come in. So if you want to tap into unlimited ions, right, or unlimitation, then we have to be able to step outside ourselves and see what else is out there. Now we are going to step out of our vehicle that we donned on this earth plane in the visible light spectrum, so that we can step out of that with our soul, because now we're ready. And once we step out of that soul, if you ever seen the movie Abyss, there's creatures and stuff at the bottom of the sea that don't need to don a shell, if you will. They just adapted to their environment. So as spiritual beings, we're adapting to our environment, and slowly we'll unzip from this shell and then exist within the electromagnetic spectrums, or this or that Shambhala hierarchy. We can take any forms within those realms and expansions and dimensions and so forth. So we want to reach a desired state. So this could be simple as that you want a new job, a new mate, you want to get away from a relationship, or you want multiple relationships, you want good relationships with family, friends, and whatnot. You may want to just be able to communicate and relate with yourself better. Whatever this is, we talked about being a mediumship here. And today we're going to get into the mediumship, because the mediumship is sort of the intermediary who can then connect to different beings that aren't able to connect to each other because of their own amplitude or lack thereof. And so the medium's able to come in and be the mediumship and broadcast one-dimensional being's information, right, formed ions. And then as a mediumship in space, I can then take that information and then decode it, remodulate it, and send it in a different frequency to someone on a lower spectrum. Lower doesn't mean better or worse, it's just the vibrational wavelengths and waveforms per second. Right? Just as certain fish can only live at the top of the ocean and others can only live at the bottom. But the bottoms can't live at the top and the top can't survive at the bottom. They're not built. So in order to communicate with different frequencies of beings, not all can communicate, so we then become the mediumship and broadcast and transmit from our ship out in space. This vehicle that I have donned for this life here on Earth, I'm able then to broadcast people here on Earth who aren't yet able to detach themselves or understand that they aren't affixed to their shell. So this observing yourself today is, and getting to know yourself, is that you are able to detach from your shell because you're not your shell. Right? The shell is made from space, although space itself doesn't make anything, but we can extract energy from that, which is producing electricity, form the electricity, slow it down, and that's what becomes our shell. And then once the shell is made, remember, this is alphabet or Aleph and Beth within the Hebrew alphabet in the Greek. So Beth had to be formed in order for Aleph to come into it. So this is the same thing as I had to build this shell in order for my spirit to come into it. So I can experience this, so then I can take that information back in the way in which we form it here, and then remodulate it and reform it, or reformation, on another side so other people can help understand it. So basically we are a gatherer of information, a reporter. As a reporter, I'm like a news reporter. I take a portal, I'm able to go in and out of these ports, or these doorways or gateways we're talking about, and then I'm able to report back and forth as a medium because my ship can go back and forth between different dimensions. Right? So as a ship within space, I then can take other people's broadcast or focus cast and then broadcast it or focus cast it to another one. I can step information up or information down. Right? These are some of my abilities I've always had. So let's get on. That now that we know that we're not our shell, that we can step out of our shell, place ourselves in another shell, and look at ourselves. Then we get insight into what it is and how it is we are acting or emoting or thinking. So now that we did that yesterday, and then we took that information and brought it back into ourselves, which then now we have that information, we integrated that new awareness into ourselves. We understand ourselves a little better. So today we're just going to add a different step or dimension to this to help you in later episodes of the esoteric classes here, is that we're able then, once we get the first, second, third position down, we're able then to finally go and then we're finally able to go into the third, sixth, and ninth position, which is similar to the causal, etheric, astral, or we also know them as God, hierarchy, Shambhala. Right? Different names, different things. It's all the same thing. But for conversation's sake, I want to be able to help you establish links to other beings on a pure wavelength, not an obstruct or pre-recorded wavelength. We want pure live streaming, right? So most people, most mediums, paperback mediums as I call them, is that they are able to tap into recordings because it's like you and me tapping into a YouTube video. It's already been recorded, unless it's a live stream. But on the psychic planes, these paperback psychics who've done a little work, who've done a little study, may have some natural abilities, but have not stepped out of themselves, but only connect with one or two beings, if you will, then they're limited on understanding the broader picture of the panoptic neighborhood, the panoptic galactic neighborhood, if you will. So the paperback psychics will most likely only have the electricity or power to tap into pre-recorded information, and they think they're talking to someone live, but they're not. They're just bringing in a pre-recorded message. Much like we can do an interview with someone, but we don't have to be there. We just give them we give them pre-rehearsed questions. They answer the questions, and on our end, we just pre-record those answers. Right? And then you bring it together, and it looks like we're actually having a conversation. We're in the same room, but we're not. It's not a live stream. It was a pre-recorded. So yes, we can tap into these Akashic records or universal recordings or archives, right? And be able to retrieve information. But it's pre-recorded, right? Electromagnetism records or takes vibrations and adheres them, if you will, into a magnetic strip. That's what most of these psychics are tapping into. But if you want up-to-date, in the now, galactic neighborhood reporting, then you have to have higher frequencies to be able to tap into the high streams. That makes sense? So by doing this exercise we're doing today, and a few others we'll do, is that it's going to help you to detach or remove yourself from your shell, and then remotely, just like a remote control on a TV, we're able to remote somewhere else, or remove. Mote, right, just means to move. Your remote on your TV is just to move channels around. So as a remoter, right, I can remote or remove or move my ions in different areas so I can view different galactic neighborhoods or channels or radios or their form of medium. Right? I can tap into their broadcast going. I can tap into their podcast. Okay? Hopefully that explains a lot of it. So here, let's get on to that third position. So let's go back from position 1. We went into position 2, got our information. Now we're going to hold that position for a second. And we're going to practice multi-dimensional viewing. Right? So you can view multi-dimensions all at the same time. Which means I can have a conversation with you and be doing a mediumship conversation with somebody else, right? I can have multiple conversations with multiple galactic neighbors while I'm talking to you, because we get out of the linear conversation and get into multi-dimensional conversation. So with conversation, remember, means with conversing. So I can converse with other ions or energies or beings, all the same. So now that these two are having their conversation, we're going to have a tri-conversation, which I'm now going to, at the same time, split myself, right? Look at this chart. So first position is you, hands on the hips. Second position is you, hands on the hips, and you step into the person that you're having an issue with, right? And get a view from how maybe they're viewing you, which is just you getting an insight of how you're viewing yourself. So as we step into that position, we're able to view ourselves, but now we're going to split that second position into two beings, and now I'm going to take that other split and bring it into a third position. Right? That's this little green head figure that's here observing both the first and the second. So in essence, this third position is a third perspective. Right? So I've placed my position, I split off from position 2, put it into position 3. And so now I'm observing my position 1 and my limited perspective. And now I'm in position 2, observing position 1. But now I have a third position observing both of them and what's going on. Now, why is this important? Why does this help? Because it helps us split our being out of the linear ship and go into multi-dimensional ships. Right? We can broadcast from multiple ships or be able to be on multiple other people's spaceships at the same time. Now, we'll talk about preparing and dropping in on a conversation, or these other beings see that you drop in. So you got to make sure that you have permission, right? And you let them know that it's per your mission. Because you don't want their ship just popping into your bedroom at night, right, without your permission. You want a little heads up, right? So there's a whole ethics and there's ethical behavior that we want to make sure that we are adhering to, in one sense, respect. So from this position, I'm going to listen in or eavesdrop into these two beings having a conversation, my position 1 and position 2. So for example, position 1 says, you're nothing but a biatch, and you're hateful, and you're spiteful, and you're manipulative, right? So in position 2, we stepped into this position, observing ourselves, calling our position 2 these names. And then from position 2 into this other person, because again, this other person doesn't really know us, right? We're presuming they know us, or assuming they know us, but they don't really know us. They only know what we're showing them or want them to know about us. And most of what we're showing someone is just protective and egoic and old belief systems. So in this position here, I'm going, wow, I in position 1, man, it's really faulting and blaming and being the victim over here, right? Turning drama into trauma when it shouldn't be trauma, it's just drama, right? But this person over here from my 3rd position, I'm observing my 2nd position going, wow, look at how they're observing the 1st position. And look at the insight they're gathering about position 1. Just sitting there yelling with hands on the hips, right? And then position 2 starting to realize how they look. They get an insight of how they appear to somebody else. And so position 3 is observing this awareness, this understanding, this conversation going on between position 1 and 2. So now that this position 3 is getting some cool insight, we're then able to take our position 2, step out of that other person, place, or thing, and bring our position back into, from position 1 to position 2, but from position 3, we're observing this. We're observing that this position 2 stepping back into position 1. And now position 3 is observing the integration of this new awareness into the present you. Is this making sense? So from position 3, we're able to observe ourselves multidimensional. And from this position 3 now, I'm able to take position 3 and gathering the overview sight of position 1 and 2 and bring that back into position 1. So now I have 3 different perspectives, new perspectives. I have my old perspectives and the 2 new ones, and I'm integrating those together. And what that does within me, my internal self, my esoteric self, it all of a sudden expands me, right? The expand ion, it gives me a bigger picture of who I was in that little exercise. Right? Making sense? So multi-dimensional perspectives is what this objective was. And hopefully that's this help. If it's not, if you need more information, just leave me a comment and I'll try to get back to you. Now we can try one more exercise if this will help you. In the morning, most of us take a shower, all this good stuff, and then we get in front of a mirror. Well, we can use this position, this practicing. Remember, this is going to help us get to and understand position 3, 6, and 9, or into the higher dimensions. We're going to raise our value by getting this new insight, and this value is electrical amplitude. We've gathered more amps, so now we can amplify ourselves and transmit a broader, stronger signal, and then other beings and other ships can pick up on our signal. Right? Now we can converse with new ships, right? The mother ships, if you will, and ask when it's going to come and pick us up. Right? But, so this practice here is another exercise, and hopefully it'll help. So if you are open to it, I'm going to go ahead and give you this. So when you look in the mirror, from first position, you, the being, we're going to look in there and see the reflection, just as we reflected ourselves in position 1 and position 2. So as I look at myself in the mirror, I'm going to slowly take my spirit being, my consciousness, take it out of my body and put it into what the being is that's in front of me in the mirror. Remember, I'm just a reflection. But in other people, they are us as well. They are a reflection. So the mirror, in essence, is a real us. It's just in a different dimension. It's in a mirrored dimension. And in a mirrored dimension is a dimension in itself. So take your energy, take your consciousness, let it float outside because it's not affixed to the shell. Just as you aren't affixed to your car, you can hop out, open the door, and get out. So here we're going to unzip, if you will, step out of our earth shell and then go into the mirrored shell. And so the mirrored shell is able to look at us. Our consciousness is looking back at us. So it's going to take some practice, but eventually you're going to be able, and some people get a little scared, and this is why in ancient civilizations the mirrors were considered magical. Right? Or if you say Bloody Mary 3 times, it has powers, right? People have given this reflective energy, this sand, it's just sand, right, heated up. And so what we're doing is amplifying, heating this up, and we're able to transfer our consciousness into the mirror. And so with our consciousness now in the mirror, we then put ourselves into the eyes, our consciousness into the eyes of the mirrored us. And with the mirrored us, we're then able to look at us standing in front of the mirror. So you want to try to hold that. It's going to want to jump back into your shell, but hold that practice. This is the practice, is to hold that shell. Or hold your consciousness in the reflective shell. And then get to see yourself, right? Be with that if you can practice that. And this may take a few times, but when you start, when you're able to stay in the reflective shell, then you're able then to stay in another dimension longer, if that makes sense. So once you have yourself there, I want you to look back at yourself, but now instead of just stopping at yourself, I want you to go through yourself into the wall behind you, or whatever's behind you. I want your consciousness to go through your physical shell space and keep going. So this is helping you practice that your shell is not affixed, it has space. So we're able then to adapt to that condensed space and go through the space and through our shell and into the wall. And eventually we want to go and we'll have our consciousness in the wall, looking at us from behind, looking at us in the mirror, right? So hopefully these exercises are going to help with you today. I just realized that my picture's not up. Hopefully it's not too distracting that I'm not there, or if it may be distracting that I am there in the picture. But that will do it for this episode, and we will sort of conclude on that first and second, third position, but we will be using these practices to help us go into the third, sixth, and ninth position. Right? And what is sort of the goal of going into 3, 6, and 9? That eventually we're going to hit this state and that state. And from that state, we're going to practice bringing in ions and holding that space. We're going to bring them from the esoteric out through our shell and into outside of us. And then that way, the energy that's coming out of us, our thoughts, emotions, right? Taking responsibility for our thoughts, actions, and emotions. So when we're emoting ions, we're taking responsibility for these, which means we know exactly what these ions contain and how much electromagnetism and amplification they have. And we know what that's going to attract to us or repel from us. So now we're able to manifest. We're able to take divine energy, bring it down, and share it with this world on a different frequency. I'm not here to better or worsen the world. I'm just here. Make sense? So in the next episode, we're going to practice detaching, and it's prelude again to remote viewing, or remotely viewing, as we talked just a little bit about today. And once you know how to remote view, now we can start floating around the universe or different dimensions, right? Or even inside your own body, inside your own kneecap, and find out what's going on. This is medical intuition, or medical intuitive, right? So we can take our body, or we can take our consciousness into someone else's body with their permission, float around and see where the sedation is within that body, the sedation is within their body, or the amplification is, or the two-tonified position in their body is. All right? Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time. Appreciate you.